Hi, Larissa here, and in this video I want to speak to you about one of the missing links with COVID, something that really hasn't been discussed much, but I listened to a podcast interview with Dr. Ronesh Sinha, and he talked about this missing link with COVID-19 and actually referred to, well, he is now referring to COVID-19 instead of as a transmissible infection, as an actually transmissible metabolic disorder. So first of all, up front, I want to say this is not about being anti-vax. I, in fact, have gotten the vaccination, but what I'm seeing is that people are just relying so much on the vaccine as this kind of protection. But as we're seeing, it's not a protection. We still need to take care of our health. And the other thing we're seeing is that it's not just the supposed chronically ill or overweight, obese individuals, but there's a lot of people who seem healthy that are also getting COVID-19. And that really comes down to how is our metabolic health, because metabolism, we often think about poor metabolic health in those that are overweight, obese, diabetic, but in fact, someone who's thin or normal weight, they can also have poor metabolic health. And it's also a spectrum, so it's just like with diabetes, typically you start to have early signs of insulin resistance, and then your blood glucose goes above 100 and you're diagnosed as pre-diabetic. And they recommend, diet and lifestyle modifications so that you don't eventually go over about 125 as your glucose level that's usually used to diagnose. But again, what I'm sharing here is also not medical advice, and I'm going to link the podcast that I listened to if you want to listen to the full thing. But I want to share a few of the top takeaways, and I want to share how the work that I do in regards to detoxing and supporting gut health ties into metabolic health and ties into reducing your risk of not just COVID-19 infection, but any other sort of viral infection, and basically how it can help to optimize your long-term overall health. But also, right now, we just want to feel good, like to have more energy, to more easily lose weight. And so, let me jump in. First thing I want to share is an interesting statistic, which is that up to 88% of American adults are actually considered to have poor metabolic health. And what I want to share with you is what are some of the signs, like the early signs and signals of poor metabolic health. And there's a lot that you can learn from some simple blood tests. First of all, if you have a complete lipid panel, which tells you, like, typically should be your total cholesterol, HDL, LDL, triglycerides, that high triglycerides and low HDL. HDL is considered the good cholesterol. So if you have high triglycerides and low HDL, this is a sign of insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is a sign of poor metabolic health. So what we want to see, and I talk about the functional ranges, not what you see like if you get lab results. These are really like pathological ranges and not the ranges that you want to see for optimal health. So the ranges used in functional medicine for optimal health in terms of triglycerides, we want to see between 50 and 80, and for HDL, we want to see between 55 and 80. And naturally, like when we increase our HDL, usually the LDL is decreasing. But for this, I'm not talking so much about LDL because that's actually another topic, and it's also, there's a lot of misunderstanding around it. But triglycerides actually come from too much refined carbohydrates or sugar in the diet and not enough movement, sedentary lifestyle. Then the other two markers you always want to look at are fasting blood glucose, which you can even do at home, like with the simple little finger prick blood test. And you want to see a fasting blood glucose between ideally 76 to 88. But essentially above 100 is what's considered pre-diabetic. But even again, once we're getting above 88, then that's an early sign that we're starting to see some insulin resistance. And then if you're in that borderline range, close to like 100, then you also want to test your hemoglobin A1C. And so this is a marker that kind of gives you more of an average of your blood sugar management over a 2 to 3 month period. And you want that to optimally be between 4.3 and 5.4. And it's good to have these tests now. If you haven't already had them, have them now, so then you get a good baseline. And then when you start to make changes to your diet and your lifestyle, you can actually see how these numbers are changing and how what you're doing is actually making an impact. Is it working? Is it not working? And there's a lot of other testing that can be done, but these are just like really inexpensive, usually covered by insurance, or inexpensive tests that can really make a big difference in terms of not just reducing your risk of COVID-19 complications, but just overall health. Another thing that you can do is actually like to have a DEXA scan, and that will show your percentage body fat. It's typically used to assess bone health, but can also show percentage of body fat, because again, someone can be skinny but actually have poor metabolic health and actually have a higher body fat percentage. And in terms of what you can do, so diet is important, and what I focus on, of course, if you've been following me, is gut health, but also detoxification, because if we want to optimize our gut health, we actually need to, as I say, like always back it up. So we sometimes need to address the root cause of the root cause. And so toxins are really one of the big root causes of other root causes. And so like inflammation, if you have high inflammation, which there's a few different markers, but one marker of inflammation is called C-reactive protein, or CRP. You want high sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is another test that you can ask your doctor for. And you ideally want to see that, like the best optimal range is less than 0.5, but even less than 1 is really good. And so we think of inflammation also as an early indicator of poor metabolic health, again on this spectrum. And of course, when we have chronic inflammation, that's just a sign that we're at increased risk for developing all different types of chronic disease, but also just dis-ease in the body. Like when we're inflamed, it's just easier to gain weight. We're more likely to have fatigue and just not feel well. And yeah, just it's not good. So what do? Inflammation is often caused by different things. It can be food sensitivities, it can be different types of stressors, emotional stressors, but as well as toxins are another type of stressor. And so I always recommend, as a starting point, if you want to either just optimize your health for disease prevention, or if you have any sort of chronic condition or just chronic symptoms that you want to resolve, then starting with a detox protocol. But that doesn't need to be like something really restrictive with expensive supplements and a lot of fasting or just drinking juice. You can do a whole foods detox, and detox, actually a lot of it is really removing your exposure, minimizing your exposure to toxins, but then supporting your liver. And so I'm actually going to be doing a masterclass all about how to do a detox. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I want to not get too sciencey, but I love the science of nutrition and health. And so I want to really explain to you what is going on in the body when I talk about detox, and what's the liver doing, and how's the gut and the kidneys involved, but mostly be focusing on liver detox and what you can do to optimize your body's own detoxification processes, so that first, you're reducing the amount of toxins you take in, but then you're supporting your body in its efforts to process and flush out those toxins. And some of them are internal, like created in the gut and through different metabolic processes in the body. And so number one recommendation, if you want to improve your metabolic health, is, first know your numbers, have these tests that I mentioned, and just start to clean up your diet and start moving more, because it's not enough just to exercise once a day, but you really want to be moving your body consistently throughout the day, like setting an alarm to go off every hour and getting up and just doing a few jumping jacks, squats, taking a short walk. But if you want to go deeper, then join me for my masterclass. It's free. I'll host it on Zoom. If you can't make it live, I'll share a recording afterwards for a limited time, and you'll learn exactly what you need to do to ensure that essentially you're giving your body the best chance to function optimally. And I hope you're able to join, and please pass it along if you know someone else that could benefit from this information that I've shared in the video, or that could benefit from my detox masterclass. Please share it. Sharing is caring. And if you have any questions, as always, just pop them in the comments below. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, I'm also going to mention that below. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.